What you doing, Diggletdreams? You got Mathers back for more Vitality Draft League Season 2. This is Week 8 versus Gil, and I just have to say something right off the bat. I'm upset because Gil has made me have to Google how to pronounce this word. You can actually see it on here. This is his team name, the Victini Plzen, and I am now cursed because I had to look up this video. Can you hear that? I'm cursed now. Hope you're happy. But at least now I know it's the Victini Plzen. Like, whatever. I don't know how you would get that pronunciation from this. Oh, anyway. So yeah, this is Week 8 versus Gil, and I know this is a day late than it usually is, so I apologize. Just because the battle itself ended up taking a little bit longer to schedule than I anticipated, you know, a week before it actually happened. So I apologize for that if you were expecting it yesterday. I'm sorry, but it's here today. And it's a very interesting team. Gil has a very threatening team. He's got Toxapex, one of the top Pokemon in the tier. Tornadus, also a very, very powerful Pokemon. Regenerator, strong offensive presence, and decent defensive things going on as well. Melmetal, which has actually been banned. I don't know if it's been banned from national decks, though. It's definitely been banned from Gen 8 OU. Rotom Heat, also super good. Grimmsnarl has recently dropped down to UU, but still a pretty solid Pokemon. And then also there's Archeops here. So my team, I've decided to bring Salazzle because with the ability Corrosion is actually able to Toxic Toxapex and Melmetal, which I think is pretty cool. And if I can get a Toxic off on one of those two things, or both of them, then that'd be a pretty good position to be in, because especially on the team that he brought, I didn't see anything with Aromatherapy or Heal Bell, so that looked good. Swampert's also here, probably one of the only things that might be able to take a Steel move from Melmetal. So I'm here with this thing mostly physically defensive. I think maybe a little bit of a speed to outspeed certain things. And this one I'm actually very excited about. I'm bringing Luxray. So all the people that have said on previous videos or liked the video because you're telling me I should have brought Luxray, I brought him this time. Or her, I should say. And this time I brought Intimidate Leftovers with especially offensive. So it's modest max special attack with enough speed to outspeed certain things, and the rest dumped into HP. It's Volt Switch, Discharge, Hidden Power Fire for Melmetal, and Snarl was the only other really good special move. And then I've got Hydreigon, Sub Nasty Plot, Dark Pulse, and Earth Power with Groundium Z, because Groundium Z just annihilates things like Toxapex and Melmetal, especially at +2. And I didn't really need anything else in terms of coverage. I mean, Flash Cannon would have been good for the Grimmsnarl, but I was like, I'm not gonna stay in to attack that thing anyway. I'm not gonna get like priority Thunder Waved. Oh wait, Dark type is immune to priority. I just remembered that. Damn. Scizor is here as well. Obviously, he's got Rotom and Melmetal, which are probably and Toxapex, which are two of probably the best counters to Scizor in the game, or three of the best counters to Scizor. But I'm actually bringing the Sand Tomb tech on Scizor. If you don't know, Sand Tomb is like 35 base power physical ground move. I think it's only like 85% accurate or something too. But it gets the Technician boost. It's physically offensive, so strong, and it actually hits the Toxapex and the Melmetal, and then traps them in too, which is kind of cool. Obviously it doesn't hit the Rotom, so I brought Knockoff on this for that. And then Bullet Punch is also super good versus things that don't resist it, so there's that. I also have Crobat. Crobat is just great because it outspeeds his whole team, barring any choice Scarfs. So I'm running just enough speed to outspeed max speed Tornadus, and then I have Taunt and Roost and Brave Bird is my offensive move, Taunt and Roost, and I forget what my fourth move is, but it's not important. So let's get into the battle. I figured, looking at his team that he brought, I was like, this is absolutely a Sash Archeops lead. So I decided to lead Scizor, and ended up getting it correct. So I bring him down to the Sash with the first Bullet Punch, as he just gets up Stealth Rock, and then I knock him out with the next one. So that's, you know, one Pokemon already down. Great. Of course, Rotom comes right in, but I have Swampert who can switch into this thing fairly well, even taking the overheat a little bit more damage than I would have liked, but I do have leftovers to get back. Maybe I should put this on slow. Gets a Toxic off, which is pretty unfortunate, as I just decided to get my own rocks up. I figured he's probably Boots Rotom, but I can get damage on the Tornadus and everything else. Grimmsnarl comes out as I just go for a Scald, and I actually hit a Lucky Burn. Thankfully, though, it doesn't seem to matter too much, as on this following turn, he's just going to go for... I switch into Scizor because I figured he's going to go for something weird, as he does go for the Reflect. And then also reveals the Thunder Wave, so paralyzes my Scizor, but I decide I'm just going to get a Swords Dance up. Because... Okay, so Sand Tomb's not going to be doing too much to things like Toxapex and Melmetal, unless I get a Swords Dance up. But with the Swords Dance up, I felt a lot better going up against these two Pokemon. So I get my Swords Dance up as he stays in to Thunder Wave me. Thankfully I don't get paralyzed, and I knock out the Grimmsnarl through the Reflect. So Scizor putting in a lot of work in the early game here, as now the Toxapex comes in, but unfortunately it's able to outspeed me and Haze. So the paralyzation is pretty unfortunate. I would have done a lot more there with Sand Tomb. I guess it wouldn't have made that much of a difference because you know, you can outspeed and recover now. But if I was able to outspeed, I think it would have made a difference, because I would be able to get a Swords Dance up, and obviously I get fully paralyzed there, which isn't great. But if I can get another Swords Dance up and outspeed, then I can start putting in some damage here. But I decided to just go for the knockoff here, get rid of this thing's Black Sludge, as he does the same to me, knocking off my Akka Berry, which I don't think ended up being that important in this battle. So it goes for another recover there. I just go for a Swords Dance. I want to try to get some damage on this thing. Sandstorm's still doing some damage, but it's unfortunate that the Haze outspeeds. So I just go for another Sand Tomb there, a little more damage, and then the Sand Tomb ends. So of course, oh, and the Reflect too is a big deal. Decides to go out to the Rotom, but I know that that is coming, so I decide to knock off, and there go the Boots. So that means the Stealth Rock are doing a lot more damage. I decide that I don't really need Swampert too much at this point, as he defogs, which is actually kind of nice for me, because I still have my Rock Setter and his is gone. So it goes into Toxapex there, as I decided to just get my rocks back up. Especially since I knocked off the Boots, the Rotom's going to be taking a lot more damage now. And I can get some good damage here. I go for Earthquake on the Toxapex, as it decides to knock off. I don't really... I mean, my Swampert is Toxic. It's not going to be doing much in this game. But I decided to double into my Salazzle here. I thought he might go into something like Rotom, or even just go for like a knockoff or something. I don't know. Or maybe like a recover. And I was like, let me get in and click Toxic, so I could Toxic the Toxapex, and maybe, or anything else that gets Toxic is great too. The full set on this thing I didn't really mention. It's Substitute, Taunt, Toxic, Flamethrower, just so I could like get a sub on the Toxapex or the Melmetal or anything else that's slower, which is actually a lot of his team. I think Tornadus is the only thing that outspeeds my Salazzle, so I'd be able to get a substitute. Obviously I don't want to get Thunder Wave, but that thing's gone. So I get, you know, Substitute, Taunt, the Toxapex, Toxic it, and whatnot. But he actually makes a pretty good double there into Tornadus. And so I'm forced to switch out. I go into my Scizor, which has pretty much outlived its usefulness, and lands the Hurricane to knock me out. But now I get to bring in, Luxray, get the Intimidate off, as a Rotom comes in, takes a Stealth Rock, and I Volt Switch. So I knew I was going to be doing some good damage to this thing if he wanted to stay in, to Tornadus, I mean. And yeah, so I got a little ahead of myself there. I was like, let me get in Luxray, I can Volt Switch, because nothing on his team wants to take a Volt Switch. if he goes Rotom, it has to take Stealth Rocket plus Volt Switch damage, which is great. And, you know, getting to switch out is also great. So, of course, he's not going to let his Tornadus take a Volt Switch, so he switches out into Rotom, which takes 25% from the Stealth Rock and then another 19 for my Volt Switch, and I get a free switch into my Hydreigon, which is going to outspeed this thing and knock it out with a Dark Pulse. So now he's down to these Pokemon, which are all looking pretty good for my Luxray. So I decided to sack Swampert there, as I don't want my Hydreigon taking a big hit, as Hydreigon is definitely still useful because it can ground DMZ on these two, and probably tank a hit from this and maybe hit it with a Dark Pulse. So he reveals the Grass Knot there. I would go back into my Luxray and I reveal the big move, the Discharge. Or no, I Volt Switch here. So I Volt Switch on the Melmetal. I knew I was in a good position to just Volt Switch. I decided to get in Salazzle and go for a substitute just to see if maybe he would switch or do anything, but he just goes for the Earthquake. So I'm like, okay, let me get damage. I don't really need to Toxic these things anymore, and the Earthquake knocks out my Salazzle, unfortunately, but that's a pretty good amount of damage, because what I really needed here was enough damage on this to the point where I was pretty sure that Luxray or Hydreigon or maybe even Crobat would be able to knock it out. And from that damage, I actually had the calcs up, and I think it was, I learned that it was at least either specially defensive or Assault Vest in some capacity, because I think my Flamethrower would have done a lot more if not. So I'm like, okay, now that I know that this thing isn't, you know, just straight up offensive with like a Choice Band or something, I know that it has a little bit of special defense in some capacity. I'm like, okay, that's good to know. Now I know that my Discharge doesn't guarantee, it's still a little bit of a roll to knock him out at this range. So I'm like, okay, let me get my my Hydreigon in. I can go for the Earth Power, and I thought maybe his Tornadus would be a little bit too scared to come in on this, to take Stealth Rock and potentially like a Dark Pulse or a Flamethrower or something, since I've only revealed the Dark Pulse so far. And if he's too scared to go Tornadus but wants to save Melmetal, then Toxapex comes in, I can Earth Power that. But he actually makes a good play and does bring in Tornadus on my Earth Power, and I look like a fool. And of course I don't want my Hydreigon staying in. It can beat these two on its own, so I want to, you know, keep that around. So I bring in Luxray again, tank the Hurricane quite well. I was very impressed with Luxray here. Goes for the U-turn, and right here is where I reveal, as Toxapex comes out, I go for the Discharge, and it doesn't clean 59%. Of course I outspeed this thing. I have enough speed to outspeed this thing easily. And so the Toxapex is mine. He can't switch in to a Discharge at this point. And I believe, yeah, Tornadus comes in. The Generator is definitely helping out here. Heat Wave is doing 37%, but with my leftovers, I'm actually able to recover, and I get a critical hit, knock out the Tornadus. It turns out he was Assault Vest on this Tornadus, so the crit there definitely didn't matter a little bit, I think. But what didn't matter is that the Heat Wave did 37%. So obviously, you know, if I wasn't leftovers, I'd be at 35%, which means it's probably a pretty good chance to knock me out again on the next turn if you were able to live the Discharge. But with my leftovers, I get back to 41%, so depending on if this was a low or high roll, then there was still a chance to knock me out. But I think at that point, with, you know, how low the Tornadus was, I just go into Hydreigon and just click Dark Pulse. It probably 2-hit KOs the Melmetal and probably knocked out the Tornadus. So I was in a pretty good spot, because then, so it's just theory crafting here. If the Tornadus lived the Discharge and was able to knock out my Luxray on the next turn, I just go into Hydreigon, I click Dark Pulse, it 2-hit KOs the Melmetal and probably KOs the Tornadus, so he'd be forced to switch, I would guess. Sack the Melmetal to get his Regenerator back, and then has to be able to knock me out from 100%, which is probably going to be pretty tough. But even if it manages to, with like a U-turn or a Hurricane, I then just go out to Crobat. I outspeed because he's not Scarf, and just knock him out with a Brave Bird. So thankfully, I don't think that critical hit really mattered too much for a couple different reasons. But anyway, the Melmetal comes out, and with the Hidden Power Fire, Colink Luxray is able to finish off the game. Whew, it is so amazing to see Luxray put in that work at the end of the game there, knocking out the final 3 Pokemon. Oh, this is what I've been working for since I drafted this team, and it's just so exciting to see it. And then there's a few jokes here about how Gil wants to bring Specs Melmetal in the next one, inspired, I think, by my especially offensive Luxray, because, you know, nobody expects the special Luxray. Everyone always expects physical, so to catch people off guard, you're going to run the Specs Melmetal. So I'm excited to see that battle next week and see if Specs Melmetal can actually put in the work. Maybe I'll even view it on this channel. But I have to point out something here. Where was it? Nope, down here. Right there. Let me see if this is... Yeah, you can see it on the... Here, I'll even move it over a little bit there. So this joke right here didn't get any... No one recognized this joke, but this is a good joke. Special Luxray Tech, and I say should have named it the Spanish Inquisition. If you don't get that joke, maybe you're a little young. But there's this thing called Monty Python, and they have a bit where a guy bursts into the door and says nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. So I should name this thing the Spanish Inquisition, because nobody expects a special Luxray. I think it was a great joke, and I think it should have gotten more praise than it did. Leave a like if you enjoyed that joke. But yeah, also leave a like for Luxray sweeping the team, and if you're excited for next week, then also hit that like button. Anyway, I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out. Keep dreaming. Goodbye.